Two powerhouse barrel proofs going against probably the best value full proof on the market, all coming out of Buffalo Trace. Let's get into this one. How is everyone doing today? My name is Chris. Welcome back to Bourbinsane. We have got a very fun lineup today, and this is going to be a barrel-proof blind that actually I've never done. I have two open bottles of Stagg Jr, Stagg, now called, open in my bar right now, and this is actually batch 13 and batch 11. So we're talking 2019 and 2018 releases, some of the better ones they've put out, in my opinion. So I figured let's put this up against something I've actually never done, unbelievably, but the full-proof Benchmark. Now, for those of you that don't know, Benchmark actually comes out of Buffalo Trace Distillery as well as the Staggs. So, proof is very, very similar on all of these. Batch 13 is right around 128 proof. Batch 11 is about 127 proof, and then your full proof is going to come in at 125. So proof should be pretty much indistinguishable between all these expressions, and that's why I figured this would be something would be a lot of fun to do and put in a blind to see if the full proof can actually hold up to Stagg, Stagg Jr, formerly known as. I'm excited to do this one. Believe it or not, I've never done this before. Never done this blind. These Benchmark expressions actually just hit Michigan recently, so I was just able to pick them up. Actually, I hadn't tried the variants until they did come in Michigan, surprisingly enough, either. So glad I was able to get this bottle, and it's now my second bottle of the full proof I've had, and I can tell you, for the value, it's good. It is good. So I already got these poured next to me here. They are blinded to me already, but I'm going to bring them up, clear this table, and we'll shuffle them up again. Just a minute. Alright, did some rearranging there, got my samples on the table, got my results ready to go. Let's give these a quick shuffle, even though I did already off camera, just to make sure it's truly blind to me. Alright, that's going to be good enough. Good enough. So two barrel-proof bangers I know I love. I mean, my bottles are almost gone now at this point, so close, and I've been nurturing them for 5 years. So I'm excited for this one. Let's go right into sample number one. Now keep in mind, I have had both of these Stagg Juniors open for a very long time. As I mentioned, 4-5 years. And I do rotate the bottles, things like that, but very nice brown sugar on this one. A lot of heavy baking spice. Definitely has that, I'll say, Stagg Jr flavor profile when I think about it, The nice barrel proof, the nice dark cherry, plum, raisins. Just today, actually, or yesterday at this point, we had a family get-together here, and my sister-in-law brought this fig, like a fig dip, and that's exactly what this is reminding me of now. Like a fig dip you put on crackers, Very fruity, a lot of dark, rich fruit. As this is opening up, too, the more I swirl it, it's got a lot more punch to the nose. Let's go into the flavor on this. Woo! Baby. That hits you in the face in a great way. Love it. I love it. That front mid-palate, long finish. Still going. That was my first sip of the day, so, that's not really a fair assessment when it's your first sip, so we're going to give it another one here. Very brown sugar baking spice forward on this one. A lot of nutmeg, a little bit of cinnamon coming through. But it's really that clove and nutmeg I'm getting the most on this. And the proof, delicious too. So, alright, let's jump into sample number 2 here. Alright. Honestly, very similar flavor profile to the first one here. It's got that clear Buffalo Trace cherry in there. As compared to sample number 1, it smells proof down a little, honestly. Yeah, this is jumping out of the glass a lot more on the first sample here, which I like, personally. Someone who's been in bourbon a while and drank a lot of barrel proofs. Nose seems a little bit muted on this one. But still, it still smells like a Stagg. Whether it is or not, it still smells like one of the Staggs that I've had, over the years. So, let's go into the taste on this one. For the nose being muted on sample number 2 here, excellent flavor. Excellent flavor coming through. That classic Buffalo Trace Splenda sweetness I always describe, you know, and especially amplified on barrel proofs. I'm getting actually a lot more oak in this one than I did in the first sample. A lot more oaks coming through. Really nice. I'm going to try not to have 2 sips of these because I'm going to come back down and go back through the line afterwards. So, all right, let's move on to sample number 3. Ooh. Completely different nose, actually, than either of the first 2 samples. This is much more brown sugar forward. Get a lot of brown sugar coming through on this as compared to the first 2 samples. You know, honestly, even though I know all 3 of these come out of Buffalo Trace, I'm not getting a huge Buffalo Trace flavor profile coming through. Doesn't smell like a lot of sweetness. It's almost like almost like a dustiness coming through. I could even be fooled to think there's a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of nut, like a little nuttiness coming through, like a Jim Beam or something. It's kind of got that Jim Beam nuttiness on the nose at least, so let's go to the flavor. Proof is there, but the you know, the mouthfeel and the finish extremely thin compared to both of these first 2 samples. Now I don't know which of these is which. You know what I mean? It's completely blind, but it is almost no finish on the 3rd sample here, as compared to the first 2. You know, it almost feels like a less rounded version of the first 2, I guess. You know, like not as well rounded as the first 2. The first 2 just put that mouthfeel finish. That's what really comes through for me. So let's give it about 15 minutes. Let these open up a little more, and we'll come back and go back through them.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Okay, took about 15 minutes there. Let these glasses open up some more. Got myself some water. And one thing I forgot to mention about these is these are all a part of Buffalo Trace's Mash Bill 1. So they're low rye mash bill, which makes sense just the first time going through all of them because none of them really had much of a kick in the rye sense or the rye department. You know, not a lot of pepperiness or anything like that. But the proof was there still. So, and you know, theoretically, Benchmark being made by Buffalo Trace should be just maybe a younger version of what the Stagg Juniors are. You know, Staggs are typically between 6 and 8 years, depending on what you're getting. So I forgot to mention that earlier. I want to make sure I threw that in there. So let's go back in. We'll start with sample 3 here and work our way back. All right. You know, even after 15 minutes here, it's still getting, I mean, it seems pretty muted. Pretty muted on this. Heavy brown sugar, man. Heavy brown sugar, a little bit of cinnamon. And I think that dustiness I was describing, like that dusty nuts, was more like a dusty oak. Not in the sense of like a sweet oak, especially with Buffalo Trace and some of their old products. I get almost like a very sweet oak. If you think about your Pappies or your really old weeded stuff too. And it's not really a sweet oak coming through. It's more just kind of like a slight dust on a barrel. You know what I mean? That's what it seems like. Not a bad nose by any means, but it just doesn't seem that deep or that complex on the nose. Well, flavor came through a lot better on that than the first time through. So it definitely opened up. You know, sitting in the glass 15 minutes was good for this one. Gave it some time to open up, and I'm getting a lot more out of it. It definitely now tastes more like a Buffalo Trace product, I'd say, than not necessarily than the first 2, but than it did the first time through the tasting. So most definitely a lot better than it was the first time through. First time through, I wasn't sure if it's something I would even ever buy again, honestly. But after it's opened up, you know, probably if you drink this down in the bottle a little bit, it's going to be quite good too. All right, let's go back to sample number 2 here. All right, interestingly enough, I think this might have been the one I mentioned as kind of a muted nose the first time through. It's still pretty muted on the nose. It's got much more sweetness. Like, I'm not getting that dustiness I was describing as like I did with sample 3. So a lot more sweetness coming through in that Splenda sweetness, you know. So if you like more sweeter bourbons, this is going to be one you're going to want to lean towards for sure. I mean, honestly, I don't know what it is, but it does smell like an older bourbon. You know, it's a little more refined, a little more well-rounded, it seems like, than sample 3. Yeah. And on the palate, it definitely tastes much deeper as well. You know what I mean? A lot more rich caramel, rich vanilla. A lot more complexity. You know what I mean? Like, this is one you can actually sit here and think about. Sample 3 you can just drink and not have to think anything about. You know what I mean? It's an easy sipper still when you're used to the barrel proof, the full proof stuff. But it's not going to have a lot of depth, a lot of complexity as compared to sample number 2. So 2 is definitely a really good option. All right, let's go back into sample number 1 here. Still a great nose on this. Even more candied sweetness coming through. It's like a candy-coated cherry. I mean, almost like a cherry chocolate. Chocolate-covered cherry. You know, that's the nose you're getting on this now. I think I prefer the nose on this one than I do to sample 2. Really, really nice. Really nice nose. Makes you want to drink it. Yeah. That's superior for sure. I mean, it really is, compared to even the other 2. I would definitely pay the most for this one. The first one, whichever one this is, when we look at it. But it is just that nice candied sweetness all throughout. You know, I'd say mouthfeel and finish are the best on this sample too. And some things you can't fake. You know what I mean? Like the age, especially in Buffalo Trace products too. I think it really does add an extra layer of richness in that mouthfeel and finish. And of course, we're talking barrel proof, so you can't go wrong with any of that. So let me give this a few minutes. I think I had my order already, but I'm going to take a few minutes, go side by side, and we'll be right back with our final results.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
All right, I've got them in order here. I think I know what I like. So let's go right into the results. We'll start with my third choice, which was actually the third in line in order we were doing. So this is going to be sample number C, which, yes, benchmark foolproof. So no surprise there. You know what I mean? I was really hoping this would fare a little bit better. But when you're putting it up against Stagg Juniors, I mean, that's really tough. It really is. You know, when I first tried this bottle, I said, man, I think this could hold up to some Stagg Juniors I've had. I didn't try them blind, though. You know, I didn't try them blind. And maybe it would hold up to some other batches. But batch 13 and batch 11, my bottles haven't turned at all. They're both wonderful still. Not a bad bourbon. And let's remember, we're talking $20, $25 versus the Staggs, which are retail $70 to $80. You know what I mean? And then beyond that, secondary is just ridiculous. So my second favorite choice was also number 2 in line. So I pretty much went by the order I had him in here, which was B, Stagg Jr Batch 11. Okay, so batch 11 was my second choice, which is this one, the 127.9. And how do you go wrong, man? How do you go wrong with Stagg? I was very fortunate to get these bottles. It was, you know, pre-COVID and all that when I got them, so the boom wasn't quite as crazy as it was, and then now it's retreating a little bit as far as the boom goes, but very lucky to get these. And it takes a lot of money spent and a lot of relationships to make, honestly. Since, I mean, maybe the last year, I don't think I've even had anyone let me know they've had a Stagg show up in their store, even when I've reached out. Like, nope, nothing, you know, and I don't know if that's because of the Stagg Jr picks now that they're doing, if the picks are taking away some of that allocation of the bottles themselves, but I always love Stagg, especially if I can get it at retail. I'd still pay $80 for this all day. I mean, it's far, far superior to the benchmark, like I said. Definitely a 4 times as far as taste, complexity, that kind of stuff over what the foolproof is. So it makes sense. And that means that my number 1 choice was Stagg Jr Batch 13. Which, going into this, I may have been a little biased, not biased, but like I remember this as being my favorite batch, even compared to batch 11, you know? It had been a long time since I had either one of my Staggs, though, so I really, hard to say. That's why it was fun to do again. I was debating about not even putting the foolproof in here, just doing my Staggs and seeing which one I like more, but I thought it'd be cool to throw the foolproof in as well. But it's so good, man. So good. I can't imagine if these used to be around back in the day. Were any of you into bourbon so long ago that you were able to find these on the shelf like anytime you wanted to? I mean, come on. That must have been incredible. Not anymore. Not anymore. Now we're just struggling to find any bottles we can, but I think with supply coming up, I'm hopeful that's going to change. You know, I really am. Let me know if you guys had any of the Stagg Jr batches or the foolproof, you know, the benchmark foolproof. Have you done a blind like this? Do you think it holds up pretty well? How does it compare? I really want to hear your thoughts. If you haven't already, please do check out my website, bourbinsane.com. I'm putting out a bunch of content articles, reviews, this kind of stuff out there. So if you prefer written content especially, check that out because it's a lot of fun and I love doing it. I'm going hard at the YouTube thing now. I'm happy to do it. I still have yet to do my first live stream back. It's on the books. It's planned, but you know, I want to make sure it's right. You know, I want to make sure it's done right. So I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you so much for the support. Have a good one, guys. Stay insane.